Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be practicing. We're going to be taking the bomb squig from the Beast Snagga box set and we're going to be practicing mostly new techniques and oil paints on it. And so I already have it assembled, and as you can see, using milliput. There are these very large creases on the model and we're going to be filling them in. We're going to take milliput and we're going to apply it along the sides, and then once it's adhered well, which is a bit tricky to do, we then take a wet brush and then we're basically just going to sand it, or repeatedly brush side to side, up and down and stuff, and sand away the stuff until it becomes smooth. We don't want to completely remove it, we just want it to have a thin layer of it over the crack and stuff. We don't want it to sand it down till there's only the crack visible, because people will still be able to see the crack through when you paint it. So leaving a thin layer over is fine. And then we will, we will prime this with Bright Touch Gray Car Primer. So we're going to try and do some translucent colors. So for the base coat, we're going to start with the Iandin Yellow and Pallid Witch Flesh as its undercoats. We're going to paint this on the Squig and might as well the Grot. But we're just going to apply it with a brush, the Iandin Yellow, because I could apply this with the airbrush, but I was like, nah, there's no point. In looking back, I probably should have, because then the paint would have come out more concentrated and more evenly. Then I took Pallid Witch Flesh and applied it from the opposite angle in a downward, pointing down. I did not dry brush this with any kind of white because I wanted to see what it would look like if I sped through the process, and looking back, it probably would have done better, the Grot at least, with some dry brushing. Now we're going to try something with Liquitex Sap Green Permanent and Citadel Ulthuan Grey, the air. I mix them 1-to-1 and then apply it onto the Grot, and it naturally highlights and shades, but it's a bit too rough, I guess. That's one way to look at it, I think. And so what I do is then I keep adding more Ulthuan Grey in, or more specifically, I take Ulthuan Grey and add more of the mix of this previous mix in, and I keep doing lighter layers. I do more Ulthuan Grey in and apply a layer, and then I do it again with more Ulthuan Grey as a final highlight, and it created this light greenish, somewhat bluish hue Grot. And then with Blood Angels Red mixed 2-to-1 with Lamian Medium, I apply this all over the Squig. And then with Magos Purple, I'm going to apply 2 coats in total to the mouth of the Squig just to get it in purple and stuff in just the surrounding area. Now also to note, because this project is much shorter, well, debatably shorter, I spend like twice as long staring at it to decide what to paint it as I do actually painting. So it's debatably faster. With that extra time, I practiced up and polishing up my Blender skills and was able to 3D print some pretty nice bases. I got a little bit better, learned how to make some of my own brushes and utensils in the thing, and can create some better bases now, but these are early versions, test versions, so. Now with XV88 and Gorthor Brown, we're going to paint the base. We're just going to do XV88 on the dirt and Gorthor Brown for these rocks. Essentially I'm going to be using oil paints to add the darkness and depth, so I just want a light colored layer there, and then we'll move on from there. Alright, we're going to move on to some oil washes. This model exists for me to practice, so we're going to use some... How do I describe this? But even though it says Winsor & Newton, these are clearly different types of paints to some level. The giant bottle and the 2 smaller bottles have a different amount of linseed oil in it, and it actually causes me some trouble later. So the big bottle is burnt umber, magenta, and viridian hue, and of course mineral spirits, odorless. So what we're going to do is just apply washes. So the magenta is going to go on the red squig, the viridian hue is going to go on the grot, and the burnt umber is going to go onto the base heavily, and as well as the white, essentially. We're going to be trying to do a lot more oils. Now, the odorless mineral spirits help things to dry quickly, but the smaller bottles had a high concentration of the linseed oil, and it took them much longer to dry. They did dry faster with the odorless paint thinner, but it was noticeable. Something else I would like to point out, so I wanted to try putting on all the washes at the same time, because then I would have to wait maybe an hour or so in between for them to dry and then properly remove and then do the next one. I thought, yeah, that's a waste of time, let's just do it all together. So when you're removing it with the brushes with reductive painting, the problem is that you can smudge the colors all onto the other colors, so I had to eventually change my tactics and get smaller portions of the makeup sponge to carefully remove it without smearing what I was removing onto other colors. So I did not see that coming. Plan accordingly if you're going to try this. Alright, now we're going to try painting with oil paints. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take cadmium red and cadmium orange mix. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to start with a base layer of cadmium red on basically highlighting 90% of the squig. The deep dark recess is left by the wash and stuff I'm not going to touch. And then I did a sort of one-to-one mix of the orange and the red, but that really wasn't that needed per se. It felt like I was painting onto some sort of gel. And so the paints were mixing almost instantly, and I had to keep getting more of the mix to add on. And I thought, screw it, I'll just go with the pure color. And so when I went to pure orange, it was like painting into a gel, like I was injecting a needle into some sort of gel and color was flowing into it because of the red base layer. And so basically what it was, I was taking orange constantly and applying it onto this wet red, and the colors were mixing constantly. And so I kept doing tap tap taps to strengthen the orange color in the area, and it would flow out and blend naturally. So this saves me a lot of time in mixing colors, blending. It blends very naturally, blends very simply. I do a bunch of tap tap taps and I can just draw straight lines, and it blends very easily into the red. It flows very well. But there is a drying time problem, which will become apparent later. Now I took titanium white oil color and I applied it onto the white parts. And so what I was going to do is try to add and blend it in. So I added a straight line of it, and I took another brush for oils, and then I just touched and then pulled away, sort of like what you see Bob Ross do sometimes. And this is a process. So I touch and I pull away, but it removes a little too much, so I do it again. I have to do it a few times to build up I guess you could say enough paint on there for it to transition well. And when you get it to work, it takes a little bit, but you can go from a straight solid line and blurring into the details. So I really did like this. It just took a little bit of trial and error to get the white to blend correctly. It took maybe around 3 tries on the exact same spot to get it to flow and blend right. I don't know if it's just me getting better at it, or I had to apply a certain amount of paint for it to work. And now with burnt sienna, I use this color just to paint the ropes that are all throughout the body. Mix it well and just apply it on. And then so I try something. I take the burnt sienna and I take the pure white and I paint the teeth. I start off with pure burnt sienna and then I just take the pure white and I just like tap 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 on the top and it just like flows together and blends normally. But I have to keep like, think of it like clay. I add some clay onto the top and it sort of melts a little bit into the surrounding air, so I have to keep adding from the pure amount in and it sort of blends in onto the teeth. Pretty interesting. I then just take a bunch of the excess paints I have and I just tap them here and there onto the base to see if something happens. I don't know, maybe it'll dry in and add some flavor. So I take some of this cadmium yellow hue and interesting problem. So I didn't notice it at the time. I paint the eyes yellow and I paint the tip of that rocket on the back a yellow as well. So there was a lot more linseed oil in this than I thought, and so it applied well, and then after filming it just like spread everywhere. Alright, so I basically go and finish up some details. I take some of that pink fleshy stuff, that color, the brown and white, and apply it to the nose and ear of the Gretchen. I apply some red onto the, I don't know what these are called, wings of the bomb. I used to know what those are called, but I don't recall. If you notice, take a look at the model, it's shining bright. That's because all the paint is still wet. It has not dried, despite my best efforts. These oil paints are not drying even after an hour. So the ones out of the tiny tubes just just don't dry. That's hard. So interesting story. So I looked up into trying to how to rapidly dry them, and I found about making like a heated box to help rapidly dry them, or use a hair dryer. So I decided to combine the two. I cut a hole in the box, placed the hair dryer in it, and placed the model inside it. And then I put the hair dryer on. It's supposed to be one that doesn't burn. And so then I closed the lid on the box, and I checked it every like minute or so, and then between the 4th and 5th minute I opened the box and then I see that the base has deformed. And so you see I'm using some sort of sticky putty to adhere the model to this base so I can paint around it without having to constantly grab the sides and remove the paint that's not drying. But apparently that little sticky piece superheated and melted and warped the base, but did not do that to the model. The model is fine, the base is not, so I'm kind of stuck here. With Iron Hand Steel, Agrax Earthshade, and Black Templar Contrast Paint, we're going to try to finish this model. With Iron Hand Steel, we're going to paint all the metal, because I don't actually have any kind of metallic oil paint, so we're stuck on that. And I went around temporarily fixing my base problem by just adhering the model to the base, which is going to make painting the wheel a little more challenging, but you know what, we're stuck with it. And then I take Agrax Earthshade and apply to all the steel parts to add some depth into it. And then I will go back with Iron Hand Steel and paint that over again to highlight. However, I did not get footage of the Agrax Earthshade part, but with the Black Templar's contrast, I used that to to paint the wheel. I just simply applied it on and it made a nice dark rubber wheel with a little bit of highlighting because it's a contrast paint. And now with Uriel Yellow, Troll Slayer Orange, and Baneblade Brown, we're just going to finish the final details as best I can. With Uriel Yellow, we will use this to paint the eyes of the Squig. With Troll Slayer Orange, we will use this to paint the eyes of the Gretchen. Which, looking back, I should have done like Mephiston Red because it's a deeper red. I shouldn't have done the orange. And with Baneblade Brown, we will paint his 3 to 4-ish teeth that are on his grinning face. Well, I would say done, but it's not. I had to call it early. So what I was going to do was I was going to apply some pigment powder onto the base and on some of the surrounding areas, belly, ground, and the wheel and stuff, and then I have to seal that in with isopropyl alcohol. The thing is though, I can't really touch the body and the base, and it's like I can't really touch it, so I'm really having trouble painting it, so I'm actually having to call the project early. So here's the thing, I had to wait a whole day and still nothing happened. It's like it just would not dry. It's taking so long to dry, so like I sat and did nothing. Well, I never do nothing. I printed up, well, didn't print up, but I designed some more bases, more variations of this cracked earth base. These were the prototypes. The other ones are less round, or less rounded on the top. But the problem is, like, I was just sitting waiting and waiting for it to dry for me to do some final details. I wanted to add some dust weathering and stuff like that, but I really can't. And I just can't sit waiting days for it to happen. So this is kind of going to be an issue with the, whatchamacallit, oil paints. I can see why they're just done in washes, because those regularly, because washes dry fast within an hour or so if you use the right mineral spirits. So one thing I did is I went to the Michael's Arts and Crafts and picked up some quick drying medium to mix with oils to help them dry faster. So I'm going to see how that goes. It's like, yeah, so I'm stuck. I wanted to paint some on his gums, and like even in these pictures his face is bright and shining. It's like it shouldn't. I want to apply like some varnishes, the AK Interactive Ultra Matte varnish onto it. I can't. I'm just sitting around waiting. So I'm gonna have to call this project early, and you'll eventually see this model again when it eventually dries. So I'm gonna move over to another project while I try to get some stuff and try to figure out how to dry paints better. I'm gonna move to an acrylic project. You can pretty much guess what that is. And I'll return to the Squigs again with more oil paints at a later date when I think I can get things done a bit better. Well, we'll see how that goes. Alright, so like the video if you like the video, share if you want to share it, comment if you want to comment or nitpick anything, or do some pointers as well, because this was an experimentation video. It's not like I know what I'm doing. I rarely do that nowadays. I need to return to my roots of actually knowing what I'm doing. Alright, I'll see you all soon. Bye.